Dostum, dear friends, we did talk about the Arab invasion into India within 1 year of the death of Prophet Muhammad and how they organized themselves, and very soon they were also on the borders of Bharat-varsha. So you see, we have this erroneous picture as if starting from then, almost till the British came, the Islamic invaders came from outside, they subjugated us, they put us under a lot of torment, but then they are the ones who ruled and they are the ones who held sway over the entire Bharatvarsha, and that is completely rubbish. That is what I want to show you here. Because as I spoke, after the Arab attempts, and once they were rebuffed, the next attempt happened only after 300 years. And this, whilst they were holding massive successes and control over a good part of the rest of the world, all the way from Spain to Iran. So while they had those successes, the Indic civilization, which obviously was built by your ancestors and one of the greatest and strongest civilizations. So this is a civilization that is still carrying on. And along with it, of course, now we have the current civilizations that are modern ones going on. So yes, we had this 300 years of gap because somewhere around 733 AD, once the Arabs were properly rebuffed, nothing happened till about 1000 AD. There were no other attempts on India. There were, of course, across the borders beyond Pakistan, Afghanistan, modern day, which is the ancient Bharatvarsha, there was Islamic nationhoods or kingdoms, as we call it at that time. And these people, there was some border skirmishes that was going on, etc., etc. But then only in 1000 AD, the Ghaznavids appear. And the Ghaznavids were essentially not Arabs anymore. They were Central Asian Turks. Not from Turkey, not from Syria. They were Central Asian Turks. But then, because of the influence of the Persian civilization, they were very, very Persianized in terms of their court language, their arts and culture, and all those kind of things. But essentially, they were Turks. And the most prominent of these, who was a raider onto India at that time, was Mahmud Ghazni. Now, you see, you will come across all these villains of our history. Mahmud Ghazni, Muhammad Ghori, Tughlaq, Akbar, Aurangzeb, Nadir Shah, Ahmad Shah Abdali, Bakhtiyar Khalji, all these kind of people. And we will show you in this how we need to look at it at a different perspective, unlike what we read in our history books. Because the perspective would be completely different, because all these guys had a very, very tough time and they were given a real good bashing. And we need to know of that. And this was done by our ancestors. And these, our ancestors, doesn't mean only Hindu ancestors. They may have been Hindu at that time, but they are the ancestors of every Indian of any religion. Whatever religion we may belong to, it is our ancestors who had withstood these people, fought them, and established their norms and mores and preserved our culture for us. So this Mahmud, he saw in one of the battles that his father had with the Shahi kings, Jayapala, he was badly defeated, and he saw how hopelessly the Muslim armies were defeated. And so when he took the throne, he decided that he is going to get some revenge, extract some revenge out of the Hindus. And to that extent, he had an expensive empire, which was comprising to a good parts of those days all the areas outside of northwest Bharat. And yet, with India, he only remained more of a raider and a looter. He did not have ambitions to actually take control because he knew that was not something that was going to be easy. So yes, he came in, he raided, he would take loots, and then he would also take a lot of slaves, and he would run away. However, once as he did that often, he did get emboldened, and he came through almost much more interior, having conquered at least 15 forts along the way, fortresses. And having done this, then he came across to the borders of the Chandela kingdom. Now, the Chandelas are the ones who built the Khajuraho temple. So they are famous for their architecture and their fortresses and everything. And there was this king, Chandela king Vidyadhara. with whom Mahmud has his major battle at Bundelkhand. And he first sends in an emissary asking them to submit, and he's rebuffed by King Vidyadhara. So, what Vidyadhara did was at night, he got 300 elephants drunk, and without their riders, he let them loose onto the enemy camp. And that caused mayhem in Mahmud's camp. But then the Turkic Tatars somehow by daybreak managed to control that and were able to give some kind of a fight, but that was almost hopeless. And by this time, Mahmud was suing for peace. And the peace agreement was that he not returned all these fortresses, everything, 15 forts, everything, never to attack those parts of the country again. He left for good. This battle happened in 1018 AD. So you see, after 733 of the Arabs, this is only the 1000 AD, almost after 300 years. So 1018 AD it was happening. Nevertheless, Mahmud did not give up on some of his border raids, and he would still come up to Somnath and raid it a couple of times and go. He was many times chased by the Indian kings and he would run. But then once, what happens is, because it is said that in 1030 he died, the Muslim chroniclers normally ascribe his death to tuberculosis. But then that seems most like a cover up, because what happened was that he was at last chased by the Malwa king, Raja Bhoj. Now you see, Raja Bhoj chased him all the way from there, and then in the deserts of Sindh, he caught up with him, and there he not only beat him black and blue, he beheaded him and killed him. This is what the folklore of the region believes. And to this day, Raja Bhoj is venerated almost like a deity for having saved them from the clutches of this sinner. And the Jat army also was involved and supported him in that. And though the Jat contingent, actually being heavily outnumbered, lost against the Mahmud's forces, but they managed to free all the women and slaves that he was carrying off with him, and they were able to retrieve them back. But however, Ghazni was beheaded and killed there. This is what the folklore says, and this is what is people's memories. Now you see, this may not be found yet through any inscription, but maybe one day we'll unearth an inscription or something that will testify to this. So currently, yes, the jury is out on that. But then normally, once again, I believe in people's memories, because normally fiction does not survive too long, you see. Fictions and fables are good, but then unless and until something really captures a people's imagination in terms of actual events, it is only then that it passes on generation to generation and those memories are kept alive. So once again, here I find that the Raja Bhoj legend, if it is going on, means that there must have been definitely some truth in it. However, this may have stopped Mahmud in his tracks. It is said that that soon after, within 3 years, at around 1033 AD, his nephew Salar Masud became ambitious, and with the force of the Ghaznavids behind him, he thought he will extract some revenge and he'll be able to get back into the Indian territory. So he did actually come, and he, after a lot of skirmishes and whatever, to cut a long story short, he ended up at Bharej. Now in Bharej there is a particular Suraj Kund dham, which is very important reverential spot for the Hindus, because its waters were supposed to have healing properties for skin diseases, etc. And there was a very sacred shivling there which he captured. So the Hindus, what they did is they tried to enter into a negotiations with him to be able to ask him to at least return the shivling. He agreed and he said, yes, I will return it. But what I'll do is I will ground it into a paste, mix it with limestone, stuff that into my bitter leaf, pan, you see, is a very popular item. And then I will give it back to you in return for the same weight in gold. This is how he humiliated them. So they came back and they said, no, this fellow must be taught a lesson. So then it was Raja Suheldev who then came across with his, confederacy of a number of kings and tribal heads around, and then they attacked these people. So what happened was that despite some initial success, Salar Masud was comprehensively beaten. again, he was also beheaded by Raja Suheldev. A Muslim chronicler of the time, he writes, he says, an arrow pierced the main artery of this faithful. His sun like countenance became pale as the new moon. The army of Islam was reduced to nothing, and the unbelievers drove them away, re established their idols and idolatry again. This is what he writes. Now, after this one, this defeat, which was from the Turkish converts, there was no other Islamic invasion again for at least 150 years. Now, 150 years is a long time. I mean, almost at least 5 generations of people passed through. So, you mean, at that time, sometime if I pick up somebody, I walk in a time capsule and I pick up a citizen from that time in Bharat-varsha and ask him, what do you think of the Islamic invasions? He'll say, what Islam? Oh, you see those people somewhere across in Persia. Yes, I believe they're there, but life goes on here. So he would, that is how it is. And yet today we read in our history books as if we were all subjugated by them in those periods. It is not true. But anyway, for 150 years, it was only again the Ghurid, house of Ghurids, the Ghoriye, Muhammad Ghori. It was only then that the next attacks took place and where they came from.